So that's it. But how we can actually debug our application? So now, in order to debug our application, we need to use a breakpoint. So how we can use a breakpoint? So first of all, let's actually change the name of this program class to something else for consistency purposes. So now let me actually open the Solution Explorer again. So just click on, at the top, just click on View and then click on Solution Explorer. And here I select this program here and click on F and then press on F2 key on your keyboard. And let's actually change this class to main class. Okay, I think it's better. Main class, and then press on Enter key on your keyboard. So now it's going to actually update the name of our class and then click on yes. So now the name of our class is main class, right? So now I want to actually debug my application. So on the left hand side, you can see this gray bar here, right? In line number 14, we created this object of type boxer. So I want to put my breakpoint here and I want to actually start debugging the application from this point. So in line number 14, you can see this gray bar here. Inside this gray bar here, just click on it. And now as you can see, it's going to actually create this little circle here, this red circle, and it's going to highlight this piece of code, this line of code that is going to be executed as soon as we actually start debugging the application. So at the top here, just click on debug and then click on start debugging, or you can actually use this shortcut F5, or you can actually click on this start button here at the top inside this menu. So just click on it. And now as you can see here, now we can actually start debugging our application, and we need to open the autos view. So if you don't have this autos view here, as you can see, you can just at the top just click on debug and then click on Windows and then click on autos. Okay, so now it's going to actually open the autos window here for you, this autos area. And now let me actually make it a little bit smaller. So first it's going to execute this line of code here. So this means that we can actually control the execution of the program. So it's not going to actually execute the program until I actually decide that okay, which part of the code I want to be executed. Now I am completely in control of the execution of the flow of the program. First, it's going to actually execute this line of code here because I put this breakpoint here. So now I want to actually show you 3 important buttons here inside this menu bar at the top. So we use these buttons in order to debug the application. The first important button is step over, which you can actually use the F10 key in order to trigger this action. So the step over here is going to actually execute this line of code here in its entirety. And this means that it's just going to actually create this line of, it's just going to actually create actually an object of type boxer. It's just going to execute this line of code here, creating an object of type boxer and assigning that object to this my boxer variable. So if I actually click on this step over, it's going to execute line number 14. Let's click on this step over. And now inside this autos area, you can see that we have this myBoxer variable, right? So it says the name. So this is the name of the variable. Here you can see the value, and here you can see the type. So let's actually open this myBoxer variable by just clicking on this little triangle here. And inside this myBoxer variable, you can see this punch power instance variable, right? And if I click on it, you can see that the value is now 0, which as you can see, the default value is 0, right? And the type is integer, right? And look at this little log image here beside this punch power instance variable. This means that our instance variable is private and we cannot access this instance variable directly. So when the flow of the program is about to execute this line of code here. If I actually click on this step into, it's gonna go inside this get punch power method that we have inside the boxer class. First, remember, it's gonna actually execute the piece of code that is inside of the parentheses, and then it's gonna execute the piece of code that is actually outside of the parentheses here, for example, this right line. So first it's gonna execute this get punch power method. So if I click on this step into, it's gonna go straight into that method that is actually being triggered, that is being called. So let's click on this step into, and now it's going to go inside this boxer class, and it's going to actually show us this method here, get punch power. And this means that it's about to execute this method. So if I click on this step over, now it's going to actually execute this get punch power method. Let's click on it. And now, as you can see, inside this autos area, we have this. This refers to an instance of type boxer, or an object of type boxer. Let's open it, and it says punch power, and as you can see, the value is 0. Let's click on this step over in order to execute this line of code here, number 25. You can see this arrow that is pointing to this line of code here, and this means that the flow of the program is actually about to execute this line of code here that is being pointed. So let's click on this step over in order to execute this line of code, and it's going to return the value of the punch power, which is 0. So you can see here in the autos area, the value of this punch power is 0 initially, because you know that the default value of our punch power instance variable is 0. So now let's look at this method, step out. If I click on this step out, it's going to actually step out of this method, and it's going to go inside the main class, and it's going to start creating it's going to actually start executing the flow of the program from top to bottom, from that actually specific point or line that we actually moved into this class. So let's actually click on this step up here, and now as you can see here, we are guided again to this class, and in line number 16. So now instead of actually stepping into this get punch power method, let's actually execute this line of code here in its entirety by just clicking on this step over. So now when it actually executed this line of code here, let me inside this autos area, let's open this my boxer here. You can see that the value of this punch power is now 0. Let's now click on this step over again in order to execute this line of code here in line number 19. So it is now about to execute line number 19, and this means in line number 19 we are going to actually assign number 80 to the punch power instance variable of the boxer instance. So now if I click on this step into, it's gonna go inside the boxer class, and it's gonna actually go inside this punch power method, this set punch power method actually. So let's actually click on this step into in order to go inside this method. And now as you can see, now we are inside this boxer class, and it's about to execute this set punch power method, right? Boxer punch power, which is going to be the argument, and we are assigning it to this punch power instance variable. Let's click on this step over in order to execute this method. So it's gonna execute now line number 18, and if I click on this step over again, it's gonna execute line number 18, and it's gonna assign the value that we passed as the argument of this method, set punch power, and it's gonna assign it to that punch power instance variable. Let's click on this step over again, and now in the autos area, let's open this here. Now you can see that the value of the punch power is 80, right? You can see that the value of the punch power instance variable is 80. So what is this? This here refers to an instance of type boxer class. I'll talk more about that later, don't worry. So now that is this method is actually executed here, let's actually click on this step out in order to go back to that line of code inside the main class. So here you can see it's about to execute this line of code here. So let's click on this step over here. As you can see, let's inside this autos area, let's open this my boxer. The value of the punch power instance variable is now 80, right? So now it's about to execute this line of code here in line number 21. Again, we want to actually get the punch power of the my boxer instance variable. So this time, let's just click on this step over in order to execute this line of code here in its entirety. And now, as you can see, the program is actually here in the console. It says number 80, and if I show you the console, you can see this value here, number 80, right? And it's about to actually finish executing this main method. Look at this number 26, and look at this arrow here, this little arrow that is actually pointing to this number 26. It is now about to execute, and you can see that it is pointing to the ending curly brace of the main method. If I click on this step over, it's gonna finish executing the application because the main method is now finished. As you can see, now it's actually go back to the editor mode, and we are not in the debugging mode anymore.